Hello, my name is Colm Early, and as a faculty member of PCI College, I've been asked to say a few words to celebrate International Women's Day in the year of 2022. As a working counsellor and psychotherapist in the field, I have had many practitioners who were generous in sharing their clinical experience with students, and I can recall such people as Carl Berkeley, Michael Corrie, and our own Liam McCarthy and Ger Byrne from PCI College. Today I've been asked to speak about the late Ursula O Farrel, who passed away earlier this year, and to our family and community we offer our deepest sympathies on their loss. I'm aware that apart from our dear family, there are a myriad of friends of Ursula who are better able to reflect on her life and on her work there. I am happy to offer my own personal reflection also. I first met Ursula during my training in counselling and psychotherapy at the Tivoli Institute in Dublin in the late 90s. And Ursula was a lecturer and facilitator and a group supervisor during those years. Following my graduation, I was delighted to work along with Ursula and other practitioners as a facilitator and trainer at the Tivoli for a number of years. As our class lecturer, I can recall that Ursula was always engaging and supportive, and certainly challenging, in inviting the student to commit to the work of their own personal therapy and to see their work as a foundation for their later clinical practice. With Ursula as trainer, you had to study and work hard at relearning the simple things of life in order to learn the skills of counselling and sit with the client. And she showed great patience with the student body that were eager to learn from someone like herself, who was, of course, a gifted communicator. Ursula was a great conversationalist, and as a lecturer in the Tivoli, I learned of her role in the founding of the Irish Association for Counselling in 1981, and later to be called, of course, the Irish Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, which has since grown to over 5,000 members. And as an association, it seeks to maintain professional standards of excellence in counselling and psychotherapy today. At the inaugural meeting, Ursula was keen to stress that it was an organisation for counselling and not for counsellors, to ensure the development of standards for the profession. Ursula, with her founding colleagues such as Celia Holman and Carl Berkeley, Odette Thompson, Anne Lindsay, Chris Murphy, helped to establish national recognised training standards, and she, along with many other colleagues, laid the groundwork with a generous spirit and a shared vision for the IAC that we know today. Throughout her career as a mother and parent, and as a teacher of home economics as well as counselling, of course, Ursula maintained a keen eye on the need for self-care and well-being. In those early days of the now IACP, Dr. Carl Rogers visited Ireland as part of his international tour, along with his team of facilitators. Within such meetings, it is now recorded that there was much public expression of emotion and trauma expressed from the assembly, and Ursula was later keen to ensure that such expressions of emotion among health professionals then highlighted the need for self-care and well-being throughout the counselling process now. If we are to be effective counsellors, effective counselling can only happen if there is sufficient boundaries and self-care in place by the counsellor. Throughout her life, Ursula was always learning, and she understood the perspective of the student, and she was certainly always encouraging and supportive. She was very generous with her time, with her talents, and as well as the IACP, she was happy to support individuals and couples that were seeking out adult education and a deeper learning experience of their own personal development. Ursula was keen to develop and support the education of future counsellors also, and she contributed much of her expertise and learning with Maynooth University, the Tivoli Institute, and with Liberty's College, and with the Henley Centre in Dublin, as well as with many community groups. You are aware that Ursula was keen to share her passion for the profession of counselling and psychotherapy, and the titles of her accessible books, First Steps in Counselling in 1988, Courage to Change in 1999, and Families in Focus, Finding Solutions to Difficult Problems in 2007, co-written with Sarah McLaughlin, reflect Ursula's own ethos and style of working clinically. Each of these books, I believe, are key texts and companions and part of the toolbox of many students and practitioners today. And the realness in her understanding of the human condition of clients is refreshing and timeless. Throughout her career, she reflected a professional approach along with a humility in supporting her therapeutic work, which was always a dialogue with the other person, and she was always open to new ideas and new challenges in the field. For me, the giftedness of Ursula was evident in her presence and in her capacity to attend to whatever task she was undertaking. She had the patience and the skills to work within the framework of the person that she was working with, and she never asked of another that which she was not prepared to practice herself. One of my endearing memories of her is her resoluteness in demanding and encouraging the highest standards of clinical practice, both in training and in the work of the clinic. She was a good mentor and was not apologetic in demanding best practice from all who knew her. And her realness in her mentoring was very supportive and encouraging to us all. Throughout her life, Ursula was a promoter of equality for women in all facets of life. And in her career, she was empowered and empowering all around her to see counselling as, I think, an invitation to speak and to invite people to consider the courage and the power of change in their lives. It is interesting that Ursula passed away on the day of Nullig Naman, the Christmas of Women. Little Christmas on the 6th of January, the Feast of the Epiphany, the bringing of gifts in the Christian tradition. I believe that Ursula was herself a gift to the field of many therapies in Ireland, and she had enabled and sparked many debates and certainly new learning. She has encouraged epiphanies in many people during her life. In caring for herself during her various and busy schedule of works, Ursula was a keen traveller, and she travelled throughout the world. She had an interest in cultures and peoples and customs, and she had an archive of stories to tell her friends. Like many of us, I believe that Ursula, who worked tirelessly for freedom of expression in individuals and communities, would be saddened for the women and people in Ukraine today who are undergoing this recent tragic conflict and invasion of their country. As we celebrate International Women's Day now, let us recall the many women who have pointed the way for us in our work as counsellors and on whose shoulders we now stand. I was very proud to have had Ursula as a mentor for part of my own journey, and for me she was always aware of the power of one gesture, one word, one gaze, and one moment with the other in our clinical work. On International Women's Day, I would like to recall Ursula and her giftedness and her humanity and her capacity to live in the heaven of the here and now. The realness of her generous life as an educator reminds me of the poem by Norma Jean Warner in her book Images of Women in Transition. And the poem is called The Awesomeness of One. And I'd like to read it for you now. The awesomeness of one. If I could run life through again, is surely the saddest and the silliest of all our hypotheses. But if I could run life through again, children would be given one match, just one match to start a fire, and thereby they may be taught, if indeed they can be taught, the awesomeness of only one. Only one grain of corn would be put in any hill, and then that grain tended with utmost care. Don't fling 5 in glad abandon, 1 for fire and 1 for flood, 1 for frost and 1 for greedy crow, with still another 1 to grow. Plant just one, that they may know the terrible awesomeness of one. And if I could run life through again, I would be compelled by truth to say that regardless of how you hold your match, despite the way you stare in utter awe at its endless capabilities, there may come a storm with gusts so strong, with such quenching, drenching sheets of rain, that the brave and valorous little flame will gutter, flicker, and go out. There is no immunity to mortality. Thank you, Ursula. Yesterday, go raibh ann an dílis. Slán.